Imagine standing in a room you've lived in for decades. The furniture is familiar. The walls are painted in colors you chose years ago. Everything is exactly as it should be. Safe, predictable, yours. But one morning, you wake and notice something disturbing. The room has become a prison. The walls that protected you now suffocate. The familiar comfort is transformed into a cage so subtle you never noticed when the lock clicked shut. This is not a metaphor. This is your life. If you've ever felt like your world was falling apart, perhaps it wasn't destruction at all. Perhaps it was initiation. Jung believed that when the soul seeks transformation, it does so by creating chaos. The ego resists change, clinging to familiar illusions. But the deeper self, the part of you that knows what you truly are, will not stop until the illusion crumbles. And in that moment, pain becomes the sacred messenger of evolution. Before we continue, if you're drawn to understanding yourself and the mysteries of human nature, take a moment to subscribe to this channel, leave a like, and share this video with someone who might need to hear this message. What you'll discover here could change the way you understand suffering, consciousness, and even life itself. Because the truth that Jung uncovered, the one almost no one dares to face, is both terrifying and liberating. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why. Most people experience this moment at some point, that creeping dread, that quiet horror of recognizing that the life they've built with such care, such sacrifice, such meticulous adherence to the rules of the world is fundamentally empty. Not failed, not wrong exactly, but hollow, devoid of authentic meaning. A life lived according to a script written by someone else's voice speaking inside your own mind. Yet here is the paradox that almost no one dares to face. The very thing that will destroy you is the only thing that can save you. The pain you're about to encounter, the shattering of your carefully constructed identity, the dissolution of everything you believed about yourself, the annihilation of comfortable illusions is not your enemy. It is your liberator. But before liberation comes the fire. And the fire burns so intensely that most people will do anything to avoid it. They numb it with work, with achievement, with endless consumption. They outrun it through constant motion. They medicate it with pills, with alcohol, with the frantic pursuit of pleasure and validation. They convince themselves that if they just acquire enough, accomplish enough, become enough of what the world demands, the emptiness will fill itself. It never does. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who dared to explore the deepest territories of the human psyche, understood something that modern psychology has largely forgotten. Transformation is not a comfortable process. Growth is not gentle. Awakening does not arrive as a soft whisper of light breaking through a window. It arrives as a catastrophe, a psychological earthquake that shakes the foundation of everything you believe you are. Jung called this the descent into the underworld of the psyche, a necessary journey into darkness, confusion, and existential terror that precedes any genuine rebirth. He watched his patients resist this journey with every fiber of their being. He observed them clinging to their familiar pain rather than surrendering to the unknown pain that transformation demands. And he realized something profoundly disturbing. Most people will choose a slow, invisible death over a brief, intense awakening. But what if the pain you're running from is not the end? What if it is the beginning? What if the very crisis that feels like your world is collapsing is actually your world being reconstructed? What if the moment you feel most lost is precisely the moment you are closest to being found? What if the unbearable pain that visits you in the darkness is not punishment, but invitation? These are not rhetorical flourishes designed to make suffering sound noble or romantic. They are existential questions that demand honest exploration. Because the truth Jung discovered, and the truth almost no one is willing to confront, is that consciousness itself is born from suffering. The awakened mind emerges not from comfort, but from its complete and total dissolution. So, here is the question that will haunt the remainder of this journey. Are you willing to endure the pain that almost no one can bear, knowing it is the only gateway to the life your soul actually demands? The question that haunts modern existence is deceptively simple. Who are you? Really? Most people answer this question with a list your job, your relationships, your accomplishments, your personality traits. You are a banker, a mother, an introvert, someone who is good with numbers or bad at sports. You are the collection of roles you play and the stories you tell about yourself. This is not identity. This is a persona, a mask so perfectly fitted that you forgot you were wearing it. Carl Jung called this the persona, the social mask we construct to navigate the world. But here is what almost no one understands. The persona is a prison built by consensus. It is constructed from your parents' expectations, your culture's demands, your society's definitions of success and worth. It is reinforced by every moment someone praised you for fitting in, every instance you were punished for standing out, every interaction that taught you who you should be. The tragedy is that most people spend their entire lives perfecting this mask, never realizing they are perfecting a lie. Beneath the persona lies what Jung called the shadow, the repository of everything you've rejected about yourself. Your anger, your ambition, your sexuality, your darkness, your unacceptable desires and impulses. Society told you these parts were wrong, dangerous, unlovable, so you buried them. You pushed them into the unconscious, that vast ocean of hidden drives and forgotten truths that Jung spent his career mapping. But the unconscious does not allow itself to be ignored indefinitely. It speaks through your dreams, your obsessions, your inexplicable anxiety, your self-sabotaging patterns. It whispers through your relationships, magnetically attracting people who embody the shadow traits you've disowned, so you can judge them for having the very qualities you've hidden in yourself. This is not coincidence. This is the psyche's desperate attempt to reclaim its wholeness. Friedrich Nietzsche understood this. He warned that we do not become who we are by following the herd, by accepting the values handed down to us without question. True strength, Nietzsche argued, requires the courage to reject what the crowd believes and create your own values. Yet this courage demands something most people cannot bear: the willingness to stand alone, to be misunderstood, to lose the approval of those around you. Viktor Frankl, who survived the concentration camps, discovered something equally profound. Meaning is not found in comfort or security. It is discovered through confronting reality directly, through taking responsibility for your choices, through finding purpose, even especially in suffering. The moment you surrender your authentic self in exchange for safety and approval, you lose the very thing that makes life worth living, the possibility of becoming who you truly are. This is the hidden problem beneath modern suffering. We are living according to a script we never wrote, playing characters we never auditioned for, pursuing goals that do not belong to us. We follow the predetermined path so faithfully that we never notice we are sleepwalking toward death, and the soul rebels against this. The deeper self, what Jung called the self, that vast intelligence within you that knows who you actually are, will not tolerate this imprisonment indefinitely. It begins to create pressure. Subtle at first, a vague dissatisfaction, a creeping sense that something is wrong. But when you ignore these whispers, the soul escalates. It creates the very crises, losses, and collapses that feel like your world is ending. This is not punishment. This is mercy. The soul is fighting for your freedom. Consider the trajectory of a life lived inauthentically. It does not announce itself with fanfare. There is no dramatic moment when you suddenly realize you've wasted everything. Instead, it creeps. It whispers. It builds pressure in the chest, like a stone that grows heavier with each passing year. The first consequence is the slow death of meaning. When you live according to someone else's values, achievement becomes hollow. You reach the milestones you were told to reach, the degree, the promotion, the marriage, the house, and find that none of it satisfies. This is not depression, though it may masquerade as such. This is your soul telling you the truth. You are building a life that does not belong to you. Psychologically, this creates what researchers call existential anxiety, a deeper, more pervasive dread than ordinary fear. Ordinary fear has an object. You fear failure, rejection, loss. But existential anxiety has no clear target. It is the gnawing sense that your life is inauthentic, that you are not truly living but merely existing. And because this anxiety has no name, no clear cause, people try to medicate it. They consume endlessly: food, entertainment, social media. Work itself becomes an addiction. The brain's reward centers are flooded with dopamine hits, each one temporary, each one requiring a larger dose to achieve the same effect. This is the great trap of modern culture. We have become experts at distraction. We scroll, we consume, We chase validation through likes and comments and the hollow approval of strangers. We do this not because we are weak, but because the alternative, sitting in silence with the truth of our inauthenticity, feels unbearable. Silence, as Jung's patients discovered, is where the soul speaks. And the soul's message is always the same. You are living a lie. The second consequence manifests in relationships. When you cannot be authentic with yourself, you cannot be authentic with anyone else. Your connections become transactional. You perform the role of the good partner, or the successful colleague, or the dutiful child. You give what is expected, not what is real. And the people around you, sensing this inauthenticity, even if they cannot name it, reciprocate with their own masks. The result is a profound loneliness that exists even in the midst of connection, the experience of being surrounded by people while feeling utterly alone. The third consequence is the gradual erosion of your capacity to feel. When you spend decades suppressing your authentic emotions, your anger, your grief, your wild joy, your dangerous desires, you do not simply suppress the negative ones. You numb yourself entirely. Life becomes a flat landscape. The colors fade. You go through the motions, but nothing truly touches you. This is not peace. This is dissociation. This is psychological death disguised as stability. And here is where the trap becomes most insidious. The longer you live inauthentically, the more resistance you develop to awakening. You have invested decades in building your false self. You have relationships based on the persona. You have a career, a social status, an identity. The thought of dismantling all of this, of admitting that you have been living a lie, feels catastrophic. So you push harder. You cling tighter. You convince yourself that one more achievement, one more acquisition, one more external validation will finally fill the void. It never does. Instead, the pressure builds. The soul grows more insistent. And eventually, if you continue to resist, life itself intervenes. The breakdown comes. The crisis arrives. The world you built on illusion begins to crumble. And only then, in the wreckage, does the possibility of genuine awakening emerge. Breaking free begins with a single, terrifying admission. Everything you believe about yourself is negotiable. Not just your beliefs about what you can achieve or what you deserve, your fundamental identity. The voice in your head that says, I am not creative, or I am not worthy of love, or I am not the type of person who does that. These are not truths. They are hypnotic suggestions you accepted so long ago that you forgot they were suggestions at all. Friedrich Nietzsche called this the process of revaluation of all values. He understood that true freedom requires the radical act of questioning everything you were taught to believe, not out of rebellion for its own sake, but out of the profound recognition that you have been living according to a value system that was never yours to begin with. This is where the awakening begins. Not with comfort, not with self-help affirmations or positive thinking, but with the ruthless interrogation of every belief you hold about yourself and reality. Ask yourself, who told me I should want this? When you examine your deepest ambitions, your career goals, your relationship expectations, your vision of success, how many of them actually originate from your authentic self? How many are inherited dreams, borrowed desires, the internalized voices of parents, teachers, society? This is not a rhetorical question meant to make you feel guilty. It is an act of liberation, because the moment you can distinguish between what is genuinely yours and what has been imposed upon you, you have reclaimed the power to choose. The second act of rebellion is the integration of your shadow. Jung taught that wholeness is not achieved by becoming better or purer or more aligned with some external ideal. It is achieved by embracing your totality, the saint and the sinner, the creative force and the destructive impulse, the light and the darkness. The parts of yourself you have rejected hold immense power. Your anger contains the energy for necessary change. Your ambition contains the drive for meaningful creation. Your sexuality contains your life force itself. You do not awaken by denying these parts. You awaken by reclaiming them consciously. This is radically different from what modern culture teaches. We are told to be positive, to suppress negativity, to transcend our baser instincts. But Jung understood something deeper. What you resist persists. What you deny controls you from the shadows. Only by consciously acknowledging and integrating your shadow do you neutralize its power over you. The third act of rebellion is the embrace of chaos. Nietzsche wrote, "One must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star." Creation does not emerge from order. It emerges from the willingness to deconstruct the old, to sit in the void of not knowing, to allow the old self to dissolve so that something new can be born. This is why breaking free feels like destruction. It is destruction. You are deliberately dismantling the carefully constructed false self. You are surrendering the need for certainty, approval, control. You are walking into the unknown. And this requires a kind of courage that modern culture does not celebrate: the courage of surrender, of vulnerability, of radical honesty about who you actually are and what you actually need. The reward for this rebellion is not happiness in the conventional sense. It is authenticity. It is the possibility of becoming genuinely yourself. It is freedom. And freedom, once tasted, is irreversible. At some point, and no one can predict when, the darkness begins to soften. It does not disappear. The pain does not vanish overnight into some transcendent bliss, but something shifts. The unbearable tension that seemed endless, that felt like it would consume you entirely, begins to dissolve like a storm that has spent its rage. You wake up one morning and notice something subtle. The air feels lighter, the silence less threatening. The weight that you carried, that you believed was permanent, that had become so familiar you forgot it was there, has transformed into something else entirely. You are not who you were before. Something within you has changed, though you cannot quite name it. That is how awakening begins. Quietly, after the fire has done its work. Jung said, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms." This is not philosophy. This is the mechanics of consciousness itself. The moment you stop fighting your pain, the moment you cease trying to escape it, deny it, numb it, it begins to reveal its true purpose. Every tear becomes an initiation. Every sleepless night becomes a sacred vigil. Every unanswered question becomes a doorway into deeper understanding. But here is the paradox that transforms everything. The destruction you feared was not the end. It was the clearing of a path. You were not being destroyed. You were being emptied. And emptiness, as the Buddhist understood for millennia, is not nothingness. It is shunyata, pure potential. It is the blank canvas upon which a new life can be painted. You were being emptied so that you could hold more light, so that you could become a vessel for your authentic self. As consciousness begins to expand, something extraordinary happens. Life itself starts to look different. The same events that once caused you suffering are now seen through the eyes of understanding. Where you once saw betrayal, you now see the breaking of illusion. Where you once saw loss, you now see liberation. The people who hurt you transform into mirrors that reflected exactly what you needed to heal. The pain that almost broke you becomes the foundation of wisdom. This is not forgiveness in the conventional sense. This is the recognition that nothing was random. Everything was guiding you toward awareness. And perhaps for the first time, you understand what Jung meant when he said, "No tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." You cannot ascend without first descending. You cannot truly live until you have faced death, not physical death, but the death of the false self. This is the secret that lies beneath every genuine awakening. The light you sought was never outside of you. It was hidden beneath the very pain you tried to avoid. The suffering was the gatekeeper. And once you walked through it, you discovered that the darkness was not empty. It was full of meaning. It was your own soul calling you home. In this new awareness, something unprecedented occurs. Peace is no longer the absence of pain, but the presence of understanding. You still feel emotions, but they no longer define you. A wave of sadness may pass through you, but you are not the wave. You are the ocean that contains it. You still face challenges, but they no longer destroy you because you recognize them as teachers. You begin to see that every experience is a lesson. Every wound is a message. Every ending is a beginning. Life stops being something that happens to you and becomes something that happens for you. Imagine living from this state of being. Imagine a peace so profound that it is no longer fragile. Imagine no longer needing to control everything to feel safe. That is the fruit of awakening. It does not make life easier. It makes life deeper. You stop running from the human experience and begin to embrace it fully, The joy and the sorrow, the chaos and the order, the shadow and the light. You see beauty even in imperfection because you finally understand that nothing is wasted. Viktor Frankl, who walked through the horrors of the concentration camps, discovered this truth. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Awakening is exactly that moment. It is the recognition that outer change means nothing without inner transformation. And once that transformation happens, you cannot go back. The old world no longer fits. You have outgrown your suffering. This does not mean that pain disappears. It means that pain becomes sacred. It becomes a reminder of your humanity, a pulse of aliveness. You stop seeing suffering as the enemy and begin to recognize it as the raw material of wisdom. Every scar becomes a symbol of rebirth, proof that you descended into darkness and returned with light. But here is the final truth, the one that redefines everything. You were never meant to escape the human condition. You were meant to embrace it fully. This is what Jung spent his life teaching. Enlightenment is not found in denying your humanity or transcending your pain or becoming something other than what you are. It is found in integrating your complete humanity, bringing consciousness into every corner of your being. The goal is not to become perfect. The goal is to become whole. To hold both light and shadow without losing yourself to either. To live as a complete human being, flawed and finite and infinitely precious. Think about the person you have become through your own struggles, the wisdom you have gained, the empathy you now carry for others who suffer. Would you have discovered that depth without the pain that shaped you? Perhaps not. This is the paradox Jung spoke of. The same wound that breaks you also opens you. The same pain that silences you also teaches you how to listen. Awakening is not a destination you arrive at and then remain fixed. It is a way of seeing. Once your eyes have opened, you realize that even the darkest night contains light, that every experience, no matter how painful, was part of your evolution. You are no longer the same person who entered the fire. You are something greater, not because you escaped the pain, but because you walked through it and emerged conscious. So if you are in that place now, if everything seems to be falling apart, if the pain feels unbearable, remember this truth that will change everything. You are not being destroyed. You are being transformed. The light you are seeking is already within you, waiting to be uncovered. Trust the process. Surrender to the journey. Because one day you will look back and realize that the pain that almost broke you was in truth the moment your awakening began. And that, as Jung taught, is the highest calling of the human soul, to become what you truly are, conscious, whole, free,